All right, what's up, guys? This is not an episode of the Fight Within podcast. I just wanted to get on here and give you guys an update about what's going on. We are taking a little break from having guests and hosting guests because of the COVID-19. Some of our guests that we had planned out are I wouldn't say fearful, but they're being cautious about what they do and who they come in contact with, be it because they have kids or because they have in-laws or parents that they're around that maybe live with them. So we are branching off and doing a little bit of a special project. We're going to call it My Fight Within. So I'm going to get on here. It'll be the same set of schedule. We're going to try to release an episode every week. It will be geared towards essentially some of those stories of overcoming obstacles and adversities and fear of failure and things like that. But it'll be my journey, and I'll be sitting here talking about maybe a first loss or a business venture that didn't pan out and things like that. So we'll get on here once a week. There'll be probably half the time, maybe 15 to 20 minutes. But I wanted to get on here and let you guys know what's going on and what we're doing and kind of where we're headed with this little venture. It is something that kind of came up with and wanted to do, just didn't know how to go about it. So I figured, hey, let's just put it out there. Let's see what happens. We're going to play around with the look and feel of it. Right now we are in what is it's a recording studio, but it's for music. So I asked one of my buddies who runs it if we can use it, and he said sure. So here we are. We're gonna mess around with location or play around with the look and feel of it. But when I was coming up with this, and when I was thinking about talking about one of my struggles or one of my losses, the first thing that came to mind was actually my first loss as a professional MMA fighter. I was fighting locally over at Long Beach Fight Night, which I'm not sure if they're around anymore, but I wanted to compete in that because it was actually the first ever professional MMA fight event that I attended. I was working for Chuck Liddell. He had a supplement company called Iceman RX, and it was a pre and post workout pill. And I was part of the marketing team, and we went over to the IMMA Expo, which was over at the Long Beach Convention Center, and I ran into the promoter, not knowing that he was a fight promoter. I'd left the booth thinking that I'd go meet some of these, UFC fighters and Strikeforce guys, and I was really excited to walk around the convention center and maybe get a picture, an autograph, or something like that. And so I'm walking around. As I'm walking around, the promoter, Jason Della O, just approaches me as I'm walking. He goes, "Hey, do you fight?" And jokingly, I go, "No, not professionally." And he started laughing, sparked up a conversation, and he had given me 4 tickets to go to his event in August. And I said, you know what? I got 4 tickets from the promoter. I was telling my buddies, I'm all excited, and I'm like, dude, this guy's the owner. We're gonna get good seats. We get there, and it was nosebleed seats. But even with that, it was at the Long Beach City College basketball gym, so there wasn't really like a bad seat in the house. And I remember thinking, like, man, there's some of these guys that are close to where I want to compete at, and I can beat these guys. If I just trained a little bit, I know I can beat them. And so to make a long story short in regards to that, I trained for 2 or 3 months, took my first pro fight, and the rest was history in regards to my MMA career. So, I'm fighting at Long Beach Fight Night. Every fight that I fought at Long Beach Fight Night, I was nervous for. Even though I prepared really well, I was just super excited because I'd never done amateur fights. And so I believe I was 3-0 at the time, with I think 2 knockouts and 1 decision that got fight of the night, for that event. And so I'm on this high, and I had just switched gyms. I was training with Mike Guyman over at LA Boxing, and then I switched gyms to go over to Rain Training Center with Mark Munoz. So I was talking to one of my buddies, Roger Shippen, on I think MySpace, or maybe Facebook, and he goes, man, we don't have big guys, why don't you come over here? And we started talking, and I said, well, who do I need to talk to? I trained with Mark maybe once or twice before. I didn't really know who he was, and And he goes, man, you got to talk to Munoz. He owns the gym. It's like, all right, cool. So I go in there and I message Mark. And I go, hey, man, I was talking to Raja. I'd really like to come over and train with you guys. What's it going to take? And then he took time off from coaching his wrestling class. He probably had 50 kids in there. And he had put one of his assistant coaches in charge, and he sat down with me for about an hour and a half. And for anyone out there that knows Mark Munoz, can tell you that that's not out of character. It's something that he'll do for anyone, and he treats everyone the same, whether you're the president of the UFC and Dana White or some up and coming fighter like I was. He treats everyone with love and respect, and right away that was something I admired about him. And so I was really I wanted to impress him. So he cornered me that fight, and that was my first fight with Rain, and I was really prepared, and I'm like, man, I gotta really impress this guy. I was more nervous about impressing my new teammates and coaches rather than the fight. Typically I'd be really nervous about the fight, but this happened to be a last minute opponent change. Literally maybe a week or two, I get a phone call saying, hey, your fight's off. A couple of days later they say, no, it's back on. And so and for you guys that fight or maybe compete in a sport or a combat sport, know that opponents change all the time, especially at the local level when you're coming up. And so I get a phone call and saying, hey, there's a Samoan guy. He doesn't have any fights. And I go, awesome. Doesn't matter. It's a fight. I've sold tickets. Got a bunch of people supporting me. And I was working a full-time job at the time for a company called Safety Clean. And I was picking up hazardous waste. And some of my bosses from the company came. And when I got in the ring, I just remember looking at the guy. And he was looking away. And I go, man, I'm going to beat this guy. I don't have anything to worry about. I prepared right. I started kind of showcasing some of my skills in the first round. The fight was only, I think, a minute and a half long. And we get in there, and I take him down. It's just super awkward. He had two underhooks, and I had my overhooks, and I kind of threw him. And then I'm moving around and moving on top, and I'm throwing punches as I'm doing that. I'm feeling really good, and things are starting to slow down and kind of make sense. And I'm like, oh man, this is this is what it's like to kind of understand what a complete fighter feels like, because I knew what to do on the feet. I knew what to do in wrestling. I was on the ground. I was moving really well, and he had gotten a single leg, and I was defending a little bit. I sprawled out, but my leg got caught on the mat, or it was a ring, so on the ring floor. And my body twisted. So he was holding on to a single leg. My body twisted the opposite direction, and my kneecap just dislocated. I didn't feel it. I leaned back, and Jason Herzog was actually the ref. And I'm on my back, and I have his blood on me. So Jason stops the fight right away, and he pushes on my chest, and he goes, "Stay there. Don't get up." And I'm like, man, I won. I had blood on my chest. I was like, man, I beat this dude. I won. Awesome. I didn't know what happened. Everything was moving so fast. I'm like, oh, I won. And he pushes on my chest and goes, "Stay there. Don't get up." And I'm like, man, I won. What are you talking about? So he goes, "Don't stand up." So I'm like, man, he goes, "Don't look down." He's telling me all these things and kind of yelling at me not to move and not to get up. And I just remember thinking, I won. What are you talking about? Why shouldn't I move? And I go in and I look down. And I'm on my back, so my feet are straight. My legs are straight, and my kneecap is touching the mat. So imagine your leg being straight, and here's your kneecap. My kneecap was on the mat. It was just completely dislocated out. I'll post a picture up on the description for this episode, and it was just nasty, man. I remember just right when I saw it, I all of a sudden, every ounce of energy, however you explain it, every ounce of pain kind of focused on my knee, and I went numb, and I couldn't feel anything. And all of a sudden there's doctors and ambulances is in the back, and there's a stretcher, and all these things are happening so fast. And all I remember thinking was I let my teammates down, and I let my coaches down. And I remember being carted off, and because it was at a gym, you can kind of hear your supporters, your friends, your family, if you call them fans, sure. and you can hear them. And so jokingly, I just gave a thumbs up. But I did that because I wanted to hide the fact that I was really disappointed on the inside. I felt like I led my teammates on. I didn't care that I got let down or anything. And what kind of pissed me off even more was that as I was getting carted off, the show had to go on, so they're interviewing. They announce the guy as a winner by default because of an injury, so I couldn't continue. They announce him as a winner. They go through the whole process, and Faviano is interviewing him in the ring post fight, and he goes, "Oh yeah, it's something I've been working on," and I'm like, bro, this was a freak accident. Like, what are you talking about? This is something that you worked on and you train on. And so that kind of upset me. And I had surgery maybe a month or two after, and I didn't know what happened. This is something that's never happened to me. I grew up all my life playing sports and basketball and baseball and football, and I'd never been injured like this. Every time I was hurt, it was like a sprained ankle or a little tweak here or there, but never something this serious. And so I was freaking out. I didn't know what to do. I was so young in the sport. I think my first year and a half into my fight career, and I have this awesome trajectory of just winning and winning and winning, and then this happens. And so this was a huge setback in my career, because at the time, I was looking to sign to Bellator or Strikeforce or the UFC. That's kind of what every pro fighter wants to do, is get signed to these big organizations and start making some real money. I won't say how much I got paid that night, but I definitely got paid under $500. And so for me to be fighting, and at the time, not knowing where my career was going to go and not having a manager, I was kind of bummed out, and my bosses from my company that I was working for were there, and my one of my bosses goes, "Hey man, we can't wait for you for a year." So I got let go from that, and it just seemed like everything, I was just kind of getting defeated everywhere. I had to wait for the injury to heal for me to get surgery. And all I really remember about being in the ambulance and being in the back is just asking for more morphine. Like, I still felt everything. So we get to the hospital. I think it might have been Long Beach Memorial or something like that. And there's two doctors that come see me. And, they're telling me what's wrong and this and that. But what I do remember is one of the doctors tapping on my knee and kind of moving it and goes, "Can you feel that?" I go, "Yeah, I feel like the pain." So he gave me more morphine. I think I took 6 cc's of morphine. And I don't know if that's a ton. I know it's more than normal. I don't know if it's really that much more. But I remember still feeling it once they gave me that. He goes, "Just sit back and relax." And then one doctor put both of his hands on my foot, and he pulled my leg down, like towards him, like towards the foot of the bed. And the other doctor kind of cupped my knee with his hands, and he pushed it back into place as the other doctor pulled it down. And I just remember feeling everything. I didn't feel pain, but I felt all the movement, and that was freaky. And so, they put it back together that same night, and they wait to let it heal. So I'm waiting to let it heal for I think 2 or 3 months. So I'm already not training and not working, not doing anything for 2 or 3 months. And I remember going to pro practice at Rain, and just sitting there like a lost puppy, just like yearning to go train and to go compete. A lot of people in sports like competing. They like playing. They love the fight. That's like the cherry on top. But I really liked the process. I really like training and getting better and challenging myself and going up against these guys and sparring with all those big names in the gym, because then you start progressing and you start increasing your abilities. And so I go in there and I'm just kind of lost, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? And post surgery, I had surgery, and I was literally in bed for I think a month or two, and I couldn't move. I wasn't allowed to move, and I couldn't do anything. I'm on pain meds, and I'm laying in bed, and I'm just totally defeated, thinking that I'm a loser, and I failed, and where's my career gonna go from here, and what's gonna happen, and I was just bummed out. And so the only thing I can really turn to was my wife. My wife was super supportive at the time, and she was all about my dream and supporting me, and so she would kind of take care of our son, and my mother-in-law was living with us at the time, and she was just a rock star. And so, there's times like now that we're quarantined, I guess you kind of understand it when you're around someone for so long, but you don't have a say. Like I couldn't do anything. I couldn't help out. I couldn't fix anything. And I just really couldn't do anything. And so I was kind of bummed out. And so I'd get frustrated sometimes. And I had to turn to the Bible for me. I always like to talk about what people turn to and a resource that they have. For me, it's my faith and knowing that struggles and doubt and fear of failure, all those things, they're talked about. There's stories there in the Bible all up and down, and not just in the New Testament, but in the Old Testament, where you can read and you can get some guidance of what these men and women went through that are maybe similar to yours. It doesn't have to be the exact story, but it could be something similar. And so I turned to that, and I remember since that day I kind of devoted myself to at least just reading a verse and getting up. And my pastor at my church, Jason Carson, goes, man, as long as you even get a verse in, like start your day getting a verse in. So I'm like, all right, cool. And I remember that this was years later that he said that, but I started doing that just because the Bible app had that verse of the day. And so I'm like, man, what I did recognize was that when I didn't, my life kind of sucked, or that day kind of sucked. And I was hopeless and I don't know what to do. And so instead of telling you guys like, oh yeah, after that happened, I just kind of worked hard and got in the gym, I did. But what I had to do every morning was almost talk to myself and tell myself like, man, you're better than this. You lost a whole year. It took me about a year to really get back into the gym, and even more so to get comfortable with my knee. Like I would never shoot a takedown on my lead leg, and I'm right-handed, so my lead leg was my left leg, which is the one that was damaged or injured. And I would never take a shot. And it was I was really predictable at practice when I would go for a takedown because I would switch my stance. And those of you that know me, that trained with me or were a training partner, know that I hardly threw kicks. And so I wasn't throwing a switch kick. What I was doing was I was going for a takedown because that's how I felt comfortable, because that's my strong knee. And so over the years, I had to overcompensate for that. And now my right leg's a little bit damaged. But, what I had to do specifically to kind of get over that hump was I had to talk to myself every morning and tell myself every morning, like, hey, man, you're the greatest. I'd literally tell myself that in the morning. I tell myself, you're gonna be a champ. You're the greatest. You can do this. The days that I didn't want to go to practice, I'd kind of yell at myself and say, man, you lost a year of your life. You're wasting your time. Go over there and go do something about it. And I'd motivate myself, along with sometimes I'd watch a motivational video here and there on YouTube to get motivated. And people don't realize, at least for me, I had a lot of self-doubt because I'm sitting here training at a gym with all these killers and all these big names, and I'm nobody. So I'm like, man, I got to go prove myself. And so that helped me a lot. And just thinking about the reasons why I was doing it. So I wrote a list, and I had a list of not just goals, but the reason why. It's like that one real famous video of the hip hop preacher, what's his name? Eric, talking about like if you want it as bad as you want to breathe. But they also talk about other motivational speakers like a Jim Rohn or Les Brown. They talk about when you define your why, when you know your why, your how is that much easier. So if you know why you're doing something, how you do it becomes that much easier because you're just motivated to go on. And so shortly thereafter, after being gone for a year of not competing, I got a fight over at the OC Fairgrounds. And everyone's telling me, don't go take this. This dude is the super heavyweight champ. He's the king of the cage heavyweight champ. This is your stepping stone, like a stepping stool fight for him to get to the UFC or Bellator. Don't take it, man. You're not ready for that. And we'll end the show on that. And the next episode, we'll talk about what happened when I fought Neil Cook and how that kind of came about. So this will be up probably today, Wednesday, if not Thursday, tomorrow, the 16th. And we'll try to post up every week. It'll kind of be this format. If not, it'll be a little bit different. But find it on YouTube. We're available everywhere as far as sound or audio on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple iTunes, Google or Apple iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and anywhere you can kind of hear a podcast. iHeartRadio, we're on there, and this will be up on YouTube. And so make sure, I don't know where it's at, up, down, left, right. Make sure to subscribe, leave comments, and also DM us on social media. Find us at the Fight Within podcast. This will kind of be under that umbrella, and we'll post it up on there. And I try to get on there at the end of every day after work and try to reply to everyone and talk to people. And so let me know if there's a specific subject you guys want me to talk about, or if you know me a story you want me to share. But that's it, man. Thanks for following us ever since we posted the interview with Kelvin. I've been getting a lot of good feedback, a lot of really cool messages, and so I just wanted to thank you guys, and just tune in next week. We'll be back next week. Make sure to share, subscribe, and like it. Thanks, man. And just remember, everything was impossible until someone did it.